Hello, this is Mr. Everman back again with another little lesson in regards to culture. And now we're going to be talking about mass media. What is mass media? So, when we're talking about mass media, we're talking about any media that is designed to reach a large group of people or a large audience. And in this case, a lot of times we're talking about the entire country or the entire nation or maybe even the entire world. And so when we talk about what are our purposes, so a lot of times we want you to buy stuff. And so advertising is an impact, marketing. How do we want to create a perception for a product? How do we make something? We want you to feel like you can't live without it. And so obviously marketing is big purpose of mass media. Think about it as a kid. Those commercials would suck you in and make you want to buy something. Propaganda. So we are entering seasons of political unrest, and a lot of times you will see advertisements for political candidates. For them, against them, giving you the good points of them, giving you the bad points of the opponents. So when it comes to wanting to get a message across to the people, that's propaganda. Think about FDR and the fireside chats. Public relations. So let's say you did something bad and you're a celebrity, and a lot of times you put out a statement or you put out an interview saying, I'm really sorry for what I did. Please forgive me. And Americans are very forgiving people. So a lot of times, public relations, political communication, the president or the governor or some kind of politician will be able to communicate using mass media. Our school board meetings are broadcast on local television. I'm sure by now you could probably stream them. Obviously, entertainment. Most of you use mass media for entertainment. Also, public service announcements. So don't smoke, don't do drugs, don't vape. You know, drive carefully. All those are considered public service announcements, and that is done via the mass media. So, what are examples of these things? So, if we look back at the history of the United States, we see that from the mid 50s to the early 21st century, we have more televisions. I mean, TV is ubiquitous, meaning it's everywhere. So, in terms of the United States back in the 50s, we had the majority of the TVs in the world. But if you take a look at the 2005 stat, only 16% of the TVs in the world are in the United States. That shows that the rest of the world is catching up. And if you see that map at the top, 1954, 1970, and 2005, you can see that the number of televisions has increased. So if you think about your own number of televisions, how many TVs do you have in your house? And I bet most of you have more than two or three, maybe even four or five. And I know some people actually have televisions in their bathrooms. So having a television or having it handy wherever, every room needs a TV. So that is a very American thing. What about the internet? If we take a look at the beginnings of the internet back in the mid 90s, it's interesting to kind of compare TV in the 50s, internet in the 90s. The number of people in the United States using the internet has skyrocketed. So in 20 short years, so from 1995 to 2014, you saw the number go up 10 times. The number of internet users, but you also notice at the bottom that the percentage of internet users being American went down precipitously. So we went from 63% to 10%, showing you more people around the world. 90% of the internet users in the world are from places other than the United States. And so again, you see using the maps, the density increases from 1995 to 2000 to 2014. Again, more internet users in the world, and the percentage of them is less and less American and more a global citizen. So how does mass media impact us? Think about think about that. Does it make you feel good about yourself, bad about yourself? Does it entertain you? What does it make you feel? And then put on top of that, what is social media? A lot of you use mass media for social media. And so how is it different than mass media? So we can see some similar trends. The internet gives us Twitter, the internet gives us Facebook, and you can see that from the beginning of Twitter and the beginning of Facebook to the present, or getting towards the present, the number of users in the United States as a total percentage of the users of that particular app have decreased. And it is a version of mass media, but it is very specialized. It is to give you that interaction between one another. And different countries have different social media platforms. You can pause and read down through this list. It's a lot of stuff that most of us had never heard of. Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat in the United States are very pervasive, but maybe not around the rest of the world. Each country, maybe to meet their cultural needs, has a different social media platform. You can see how those things increase, but you can see from this map that Facebook has really blossomed into the global phenomena. So if Facebook was a country, it would be the largest country population-wise in the world. There's well over 1.5 billion users of Facebook. Now think about this for a moment. How should the government regulate or monitor mass media? That's been something in the United States that's been going on for years. So this is an image of a pro wrestling match in Saudi Arabia. Now, what makes this interesting is this is U.S. star Natty Neidhart against U.S. star Lacey Evans. If you watch pro wrestling, you would know that these two women typically wear less clothing when they wrestle in the United States. This is the first women's match in Saudi Arabian history. They typically do not allow women to wrestle. And so, by mass media broadcasting the TV show into Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabian people at their wrestling shows were now beginning to want to see women wrestling. And so, you will notice that other than their hands and their faces, women are totally covered. That is in respect of the Saudi Arabian culture. And the fact that they're not wearing some kind of veil is kind of momentous. The fact that they're not maybe wearing gloves is kind of momentous. The WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, thought that this would be a way to kind of promote their women on their roster. And there's many, many more women wrestlers, but this was a way of kind of connecting mass media and social media because people in Saudi Arabia have Twitter and Facebook, and they're fans of these two professional wrestlers. And it is kind of connecting traditional Saudi Arabian culture to the rest of the world. Saudi Arabia, which didn't even allow women to drive until a few years ago. So different governments around the world have different attitudes towards media. So for instance, the United States, it's fairly free. The internet is basically the Wild West. Anything really goes on the internet. But you take a look at Mexico, and India and Russia and different countries throughout the world. The countries in yellow there are partly free. They're not totally free in terms of broadcasting. And obviously the pinkish purple countries are definitely not free. The government totally controls everything about the media. And so it is kind of interesting that Google in China, if you Google something in China, there actually is a filter in China that will monitor A, what you're Googling, and B, it actually keeps certain things out. And so Google over the years has been criticized for allowing that to occur, but Google realizes there's a billion potential customers, so they're kind of gonna bend what the Chinese want. Why would leaders of folk cultures or non-Western countries resist allowing mass media into their nations? Think about that for a moment. So let's say you are the leader of a small group of people and you are the bee's knees. You are the leader. And you know that you're a big deal. And here comes Western culture, shiny, fancy, very, very modern. And if you're the leader of a folk culture, you may not look as cool anymore. You may not look as important. You may not look like a superhero to your followers. And so mass media a lot of times creates very ill will from smaller or more traditional or conservative cultures because the people want new, the people want shiny. And so would you want your people, let's say you have a small culture, let's say you have a very traditional culture, would you want your people exposed to things like very violent video games, Snapchat, Rick and Morty, weird reality shows, crazy families like the Kardashians, just having access to YouTube or the crazy folks on the reality programs like that girl, Cash Me Outside, how about that? Do you want your people to be influenced by them? And that, in the United States, that's something that we have the freedom to choose for ourselves. But in a lot of cultures, they don't want their people to have that. So remember, for every action, So for everything that, you have your soda, Coke, Pepsi throughout the world. You have McDonald's, you have cell phones and cigarettes. You have all this technology around the world. Remember, for every action, just like in the old physics, you remember for all the Walmarts, for all the Americanization around the world, for all of those things, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And so if you go back into the history of especially the Middle East, and you go back into the 1970s, as more and more modern technology brings more and more Western ideas to that part of the world, a very conservative, a very non-traditional, a very non-Western part of the world, and all of a sudden, all these not only American but European ideas start flooding the area. The people don't appreciate it, especially the very conservative religious folks. And what happens is a backlash. So for that action, that equal and opposite reaction is fundamentalism. And in the case of the Middle East, Islamic fundamentalism. And that's where we saw the beginning of increased terror attacks, more organization, and the whole death to the great Satan down with America. And so mass media has wide-reaching repercussions around the world. It's informative, it's entertaining, but it also creates cultural change that we may not understand because we're not necessarily the ones being changed, or we're being changed so much we don't realize that we're being changed. So think about that, incorporate that with what you know about culture, what you know about customs, what you know about habits, and all the other things that you've read about so far in this chapter. So think about that for a moment, and we'll pick back up with that next time. Have a good one.